can always cut that bit anyway. Excuse me. Okay, this is not live, so you can relax a little bit. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How you doing, guys? Riaz again, Straight Talk, and today I have a special guest,
Nicolas.
Nicolas. Now, Nicola's got a very interesting story, quite a sad story as well at the same time. We'll get to that in a minute. Just want to introduce Nick. Nicola's from Birmingham, I believe.
That's right, yeah, Birmingham.
But she hasn't got a Birmingham accent, you can see. She's not got one of those, you know what I mean, mate? You know, you haven't got that accent, have you?
No, I've got a slight Welsh twang to my voice.
Is that worse than a Birmingham accent?
Oh, I think they're on the same level. But I was brought up in Wales, in Snowdonia, so...
Oh, lovely. I was there 3-4 weeks ago in the
you?
mountain. It's
Okay.
lovely round
Yeah,
there.
it's beautiful. Really
It was
beautiful.
tiring though, climbing that. Oh, we went down, not the pig track. Is it the miners track? You climb up.
Oh, I don't know.
You never done it?
No, never done it. Haven't even been up Snowdon. That's
Wow.
how bad it is.
And how long were you living there?
Gosh, a good number. I was there from about 2 years old till I was 14, so a good number of years.
And you never climbed?
And I never did it.
Wow.
How lazy am I?
What can I say? So Nicola here's got a kind of a sad story, to be honest with you, haven't you?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Would you like to go straight into it?
Gosh, where do I start? To be honest with you, I think really probably I need to start with first and foremost, I'm a mother of 5 children, and I'm also a counsellor, a trained therapist. But most importantly, I'm a mother of 5 children.
You've got 5 kids?
5 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
All boys or girls?
No, one boy and 4 girls. So yeah.
Right.
All kind of grown up now.
Are they?
Okay. But that is one of my most important roles, is being a mother. It always has been. Particularly because, again, my mother, when I was very young, she unfortunately struggled with alcohol. And so it was very difficult. So being a mother was really important to me, and making sure I was really protective over my kids and made sure they had all their needs met. Because I hadn't felt that before. So growing up, being the mother was really important to me, and doing my best by them. Everything was great until probably I got married, and I converted to Islam when I was about 19. Everything
was quite young.
Yes, yeah. I actually converted before I married. I met my husband. Faith and going to church was a big thing for me. And then I kind of got a bit lost in the church and felt I was trying to look for something else, and then I came upon some friends who were Muslims, and
this was in Wales?
This was in Wales, and it wasn't back then in sort of the 80s and 90s, it wasn't very diverse. So these Muslims, I found, what are these? This is strange, this was all new to me. And so I was intrigued and curious, and that's when I started to learn about Islam, and it felt right for me. It gave me kind of the boundaries and structure that I didn't have in life before, and it gave me a lot of inner peace that I was looking for at the time.
Was that the Sufi version of Islam, or was it?
Slightly, I think. Looking back, I probably do, but I think it was a very spiritual kind of thing for me, and that kind of attracted me, that side of it. Which was really important. But like I said, I settled that. I got married after that, and then began my family that I'd always kind of wanted. Everything was great. Everything seemed to be ticking fine, and the children were growing. I secretly, after I had my girls, I secretly wanted a little boy, because I wanted to kind of experience how it was to be a mother, not just to a daughter, but to have that mother and son relationship, because it is different slightly, so I kind of wanted to experience that. And then Rashid came along, my son, in 1996.
Oh, so he was quite young.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Was he the youngest?
He wasn't the youngest, there was another girl after him. But he was, it was 1996, he came along.
Yeah, my son was born in 97, so he's 22 now. So anyway. So, okay, so you brought him up the best you could. As parents, we try our best, don't we? We want the best for our kids because we want them to be better. We want them to be better than us. We want the best things for them. We want them to have a better house than us, a better job than us, more money than us. As parents do, it's a natural thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's how I was, because I'd had quite a difficult life, and it had been, there was domestic violence, there was the alcohol abuse. It was very, very difficult, and I struggled as well in school, because up until a few years ago I was diagnosed with dyslexia, which I didn't even know about. I had, and I'd been struggling. I knew I wasn't stupid, I knew I was intelligent, but I knew I had my struggles. So there was lots of things I struggled with growing up. And like I said, I wanted the best for my children. I wanted them, not to say I wanted the best in material things, but I wanted them to feel loved, and to have their needs met, and also be guided, because I didn't really feel that, unfortunately, with the turbulence and dysfunction of my family, I didn't feel that guidance from my family, hence why I looked for it in religion, and I came across Islam. And so I wanted to emanate that in my family, that I was bringing into the world. So like I said, Rashi came along, and he was, like I said, he was just everything that I'd wished for and prayed for. He was just a very sort of happy child, very easygoing child, and just a very funny character growing up, full of life, always full of adventure. He was constantly jumping off something and doing somersaults, and
sounds like my boys when they were young.
I mean, he loved his football. He was a big Arsenal fan.
Not bad. I like Arsenal.
He was great at, he did martial arts, and he was not far off from his...
My son's an Arsenal fan.
Oh, really?
And he does martial arts as well, which is really bizarre. Yeah.
But he was not far off from his black belt, and so he was really kind of quite focused in that. And then later on he started doing parkour, free running.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, like the somersaults and the wherever cartwheels. But come with that was it's always a scary thing, because I remember he was constantly jumping off something and somersaulting off something, and to the point where every year I would take him to A&E. And I even said to him one day, I said to him, for God's sake, Rashid, if you carry on like this, I'm going to need a membership with this hospital. He was that adventurous all the time. So he had
kids
that,
like that. Yeah. Well, most kids. Yeah.
So he has that energy and sort of, and he did really, academically, he worked hard and he did well. He got 12 GCSEs.
Wow, that's a lot.
So he did academically well. He had to push him, but he still came out really well.
Sounds like the perfect child. Just about,
yeah.
Martial arts, parkour, boisterous,
Absolutely.
adventurous, good qualifications, education-wise, good family around him.
Yeah, and a sense of community. He had a good sense of the community. My husband used to go to the mosque regularly for most of the daily prayers, and Rashid would go along with him, to the point where people in the community used to, I remember people commenting saying Rashid was like my husband's tail, because he was, wherever my husband was, Rashid was behind him, and that's how they were. But it was unfortunately when he was about kind of 18 in 2014, he kind of then decided he wanted to go to a different mosque, and things started changing with him. Instead of being that kind of boisterous,
and
funny.
This is in Wales?
No, we were in Birmingham then. We'd moved to Birmingham. So he then sort of, his character started to change. He, instead of being that very fun-loving, funny boy, he then began to question a lot of things, and sort of was more serious. Had a very serious perspective, which again was quite out of character for him.
So the mosque he went to, do you think that they sort of changed his Islamic point of view, Islamically?
I don't know. Looking back, I really don't think so. I think he branched away from the mosque because he went to a different mosque because he didn't want my husband to see on who he was mixing with. And I think it was his way of kind of detaching slightly from his dad. I don't think necessarily it was actually the mosque at all contributing. I think it was more actually him wanting to kind of detach really and not have the watchful eye of his dad really around.
To steer him in the right direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
So unfortunately, like I said, I think in the community there was somebody who realised...
Some elements, yeah.
There was also, what happened in that year as well, was my husband and me were going through some marital difficulties, like any marriage, that, when you've got 5 children, they're all teenagers, and when you've been married over 25 years, it's natural, it's normal. Yeah. But Rashid, because he had his world was very, very complete, and he knew it, he was very close to his mum and dad, he was very close to his sisters. When my husband moved out for a little while to give us some space, that's when Rashid...
So your husband's Arab, he's not English, is he?
No, he's Arab. So I think at that point then, that's when Rashid was kind of like, he didn't quite understand his world anymore, or what things were like. Things didn't feel certain, because he always knew everybody was around him and he felt secure. And I think when obviously his dad moved out, I think that's when he then began to question things, and he withdrew, because I think emotionally, also being a boy, it's sometimes very, very difficult, particularly young teenage boys, to kind of really express themselves, or feel that they're not going to be belittled or kind of mocked. You know, and that's the problem. I think, you know, what happened was he then reacted and just kind of withdrew into himself, and didn't ask
so
anything.
That's trauma then, basically. You got traumatized by the
yeah, I think it really
separation.
affected him mentally. You know, it kind of really, it made him really question a lot of things. But unfortunately, instead of being able to just kind of, it just being like a normal phase that, you know, people, you know, that's the way we build resilience, and it's fine. But unfortunately, somebody came at the wrong at that time, and that's when they put some ideas into my son. They kind of, what they initially did was befriend him and build up a relationship, a very trusting relationship. And they certainly didn't come in with the ideology or the kind of radical ideas. It was much later on down the line that came along. They built that friendship with him first. They built that relationship. This person was his comfort. This person was his guide, and that's what they do. It's kind of, it's no different from really grooming.
Grooming, it is, absolutely. So he was groomed by his persons.
Yeah.
As far as you know, you didn't know at the time what was happening.
No. I just could see these slight changes in him, with his character.
Well, you thought maybe he was going through teenage,
yeah,
or adulthood, or he's going through some sort of. I wouldn't say puberty, because he was, how old was he then?
He was 18 then.
18, so yeah, it could have been from teenage to adulthood, because they change a lot, don't they? Their attitudes.
Yeah, I think for me, when I reflect back, when at the time I just thought he's going through this teenage phase, because being a boy, sometimes they develop slightly sort of slower than the girls. Yeah. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe he's trying to find his independence and kind of, you know, and detach himself from his parents to find his own identity. So I kind of put it down to that, and I thought, okay, I have to kind of give him that leeway just to find himself, not really thinking there was something really sinister behind it in any way. You know, I just could see these character changes that were happening to him.
So then what happened?
Well, this went on for about a year.
So he's going through. How long were you split up with your husband for?
Only for a few months, and then he came back.
Did you go back to normal, Rashid?
Unfortunately, everything seemed to be back on track with our marriage, and everything was going well, and everything seemed great with the family again. But what happened was, it was kind of slightly too late then at that point, because somebody had got to Rashid. Somebody had already kind of started the process with Rashid. So when my husband came back, we just carried on our normal family life. Not knowing that Rashid was almost having this sort of double life going on, really. Because Rashid was, you know, he was an engineering apprentice.
Same as my son.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh really?
Yeah. He was
and that's the scary thing about it. I think, you know, a lot of people, when I talk, can identify with all the things, saying, "God, that's my child." Yeah, well, God, my son's done. Wow. And the thing, and that is what the stark reality of it. It can just be a slight change that can make somebody go one way or another, and that's what people kind of think. You know, we all do it. We have this kind of, we live in a bubble and think things. We read things and see things, and we say, "Oh, it'll never happen to us." That could never possibly. But unfortunately, it can, especially with the internet today. Yeah. Because had it not been for the internet, I don't think it had got that far. Yeah. I'm not saying somebody wouldn't have radicalized, you know, begun the process, but it certainly escalated with the internet and the wide web. Yeah. That's what happened, and that's what quickened it as well.
Wow. Scary.
Yeah.
It's frightening, to be honest with you, because the similarity between my son and your son are very, very similar.
Yeah.
Martial arts, academically quite clever.
Yeah.
Young. Engineering apprentice. My son did it for a year, then he went on to do an engineering degree, but he didn't like it. Wow.
Yeah.
Just the
And that's why we, you know, sometimes we mustn't think it's children, you know, kids from a certain family or with a certain background, whether they, you know, because they talk about criminality or they talk about gangs and knife crime. It's not necessary. You know, some of the ones I've known have been from very educated families who are very kind of liberal and kind of open to listen to views, but it's still their children have been hooked into, you know, have got hooked in, and before they've known it,
absolutely,
you know.
So for a year he was, your son was up and down for a year. So then what happened after that? Did he say to your mum, I'm going to go to this place and I'm not going to see you again? Or did you just disappear?
Well, basically what happened was, it was like this for about a year. It was kind of up and down, and sort of, you know, there would be bits of arguments or clashing at home, and then it'd go quiet again. And then suddenly things seemed to escalate with him slightly round about sort of Christmas time. And then suddenly it was at Christmas time, that's when I found this present on my pillow when I came home from work. And it was basically this diamond necklace on my pillow, with a letter that simply said, to Mama, all the diamonds and all the gems in the world will never make up for what you are to me. And I remember asking him, why have you got, what's that for? Because I thought, it's not my birthday, it's not Eid, and you know. And he just shrugged his shoulders and went, just. And I didn't want to push it with him because I thought, okay, he doesn't want a molly-cuddling mum and, you know, to be afraid. So I said, okay, you know, it was just, maybe he just wanted to kind of, it was a present. What I didn't realise, or just after that point, all the arguments stopped. He went back to his normal self. He was happy. He was joining in with activities at home again. But what I didn't realise, when I just went, oof, thank God for that, everything's over, the phase is gone, I didn't realise he was actually had made that decision that he was going to go, and that was his goodbye present to me. And so that's really what the present was about. It was his goodbye present to me. He got a present for me, he got a present for his dad, and he got a present for his little sister, and that was his way of saying goodbye, but not telling us, not giving us that chance to say goodbye to him. It was a few months later. He went to work in the morning as normal, and he just never came back.
How did you feel that time when you thought, where is he? Did you start, obviously start panicking because he never answered his phone or whatever? When did you know that he'd actually gone over to Syria? To be honest with you, I think normally you could time him by clockwork. If he was coming in from work or he was doing something, he'd always tell you a time and he'd be there. If he was even going to be 10 minutes late, he would always let me know because he didn't want me to get anxious or worry about him. He'd always let me know. He didn't come home from work, and within half an hour, I kind of knew, I thought something's wrong. But I, at that point, still thought something had just happened to him. Maybe he had a bit of an accident, maybe he got delayed. It was only when I started trying to contact him, frantically trying to text him, phone him, he wasn't picking up. But it's still at that point, I still didn't think anything. I just thought something's happened to him. I thought he's been in an accident, he's probably been mugged, because he had been mugged a couple of times around our area. And so I thought, oh God, has something happened to him? But then I said to my husband, we need to go to the police station. Did you have a mobile phone with him?
That we did. We tried to contact him by mobile. Right. We did. We were texting him and phoning him, and he wasn't picking up. And at that point, that's when we said, look, we need to go to the police to report him missing, because, you know, we really thought something had happened to him. But unfortunately, because he was over 18 and because he'd only been missing half an hour, there was nothing, they couldn't do anything at that point.
24 hours later, I think. 24 hours?
48 hours, I think, yeah. So there was nothing they could do, which was really, it was frustrating for me, but I understood what the police officer was saying, but I just knew myself as a mum, it was out of character. Yeah. It was completely out of character for him. And that's what I was telling the police officer. I kept saying to him, this is not Rashid, this is not Rashid. But again, they've got their protocols to follow. It was a couple of days later when I got a message from him. And it was a very initially when I got this message after 2 days, I remember
text message. It
was a text message through WhatsApp, and when I got this message, it came up. I just remember this feeling so relieved, thinking, oh my God, he's alive, he's okay. And I just remember feeling, oh, thank God. And then suddenly, when I started reading the text message, my heart, literally my stomach, it just felt dropped. because it talked about paradise, it talked about the hereafter, it talked about warning me not to go to the police, don't go to the media because they'll make my life hell. And I knew from that kind of narrative something was really wrong here. I still didn't know what, but I knew something really bad was going on. So that's when we went a second time to the police station, and that's when I showed them the text message, and then they went okay, and they kind of went, yeah, there's something wrong here. But it was still some time. It was only the investigation with the police that then they saw CCTV images of him, and he was walking to the airport and he boarded a plane to Istanbul. And that's
from Birmingham Airport.
Yeah, from Birmingham Airport, and that's when we knew at that point, okay, it looks like, because there was a lot of media coverage then, there were lots of individuals and families going to Syria via Istanbul and Turkey. So immediately our thoughts went, oh God, what's he done? You know, what's he done? And that's when
obviously you tried to contact him back
constantly.
He was just ignoring your messages.
He actually said in the message following that first one, he said, I'll be with a phone for 30 days. You won't be able to contact me. I won't have a phone for 30 days. So, and then the phone went dead. I could not get hold of him. Yeah.
You've been tearing your hair out.
Oh God, yeah. It's most terrifying because you kind of know where he's probably gone. He hasn't confirmed it. You kind of are guessing.
Yeah.
And the problem is, you know, there's nothing worse than guesswork.
Yeah.
Because your mind does awful tricks. You imagine the worst things. And you know, it's sometimes better to have the facts and know what you're dealing with rather than just guessing. And that's what I ended up doing, was just guessing, imagining where he was, what he was doing, and it was just horrific. My imagination would go just wild, really.
So you didn't have no idea about him joining ISIS, you just had an inkling that he's going to join ISIS, but you wasn't 100% sure.
Not at all.
Because in his message he didn't mention ISIS at all, did he?
Nothing. He didn't message who he'd gone, he didn't even message where he was.
Wow.
It was only through the investigation that the police kind of guessed and said, you know, he's gone to East Up, so we think we still then, even the police said to me, let's just hope he's gone, you know, on a holiday. And you know, he's going to go, oh, I'm stupid, I'll go back, you know. But we kind of knew that was very unreal. We kind of knew that actually it's probably unlikely, you know. But it was weeks and weeks went by. It was probably 10 weeks before I heard anything from Rashid again.
Wow.
Yeah, 10 weeks where nobody... And the worst thing was that I was training to be a therapist at the time. So I was training. I had 3 jobs. So I had a job and I had 2 placements. So I was counselling people. And family, friends, community, nobody knew what I was going through, and I was trying to put this.
You didn't tell anyone?
I couldn't tell anybody at the time because I remember just feeling such shame, and also I thought, how am I going to answer people? Because naturally it's normal that people will ask me questions, and I thought, I can't even answer my questions. I don't even know. I don't have the answers for myself. Never mind to give them to somebody else. And that's why I just kept it. And plus, again, it was the huge shame of it. I just was weighed down by the shame of, how could this happen? We were a normal family. We educated our kids. We were working hard, contributing to society and communities. And how did this just fall on our laps?
I must have put a lot of strain on your own family life as well, with your kids and your husband as well. Must have put a lot of strain on.
Absolutely, because whether it was myself, I was questioning myself as a mother. What did I do? Did I miss something? When you even go back to silly things when he was a toddler, thinking, oh gosh, was I a bit harsh with him there, or should I have done that? You go into your mind goes everywhere, and equally I was doing that, but so was my husband. So were his sisters. His sisters. He had 3 older sisters, and that was their little brother. And so they often kind of thought, we should have known. And I often said, well, if we didn't know his parents, how would you know? They were just like, but we're his sisters, maybe he would have talked to us. And I said, I don't think so. It was,
So the whole family just didn't have a clue what was going on. And when he went, how did your sisters feel when he went? How did they cope with it? Little brother gone. Especially the littlest one.
Yeah.
Were they very close to him?
They were all very close to him. And particularly the youngest. She was only 14 at the time. And that was hard for her, because I thought, you know, as adults, my older children, they were adults, and even us as adults, we found it, we couldn't get our heads around it. We felt like, with all the police being in our life constantly, we felt like we were thrown in a really, really bad espionage film. That's how it felt. And I thought, if we feel like that, I can't even imagine what my youngest daughter felt when she was 14. And all they want to think about at that age is really, you know, what's the fashion, they're making the latest music. They don't want to be thinking about terrorist groups or thinking about the, you know, all these kind of things and extremism. It's not, sometimes it's not something that's on, you know, on their radar, and you know, why should it? Because they, you know, they live, that's their little world.
Yeah, of course.
So it's very difficult, you know, for all my daughters. I mean, it was very difficult to talk about it as a family, because we were all hurting, we were all in such pain, and if we talked about it, we were all conscious that we didn't want to hurt or upset the other person. And so we'd stop talking about it, which isn't the best thing either, you know, because you naturally, no matter what, whether you talk about it or not, you're hurting, you're going to get upset.
Yeah, of course. There's people out there that will say, well, it's their parents' fault. Oh, so what? You shouldn't have joined ISIS. I don't have no pity for the woman or the family. But they don't understand that this boy did not tell the parents or his siblings what was going on. So you can imagine what they're going through at the same time. I mean, it's horrible, because they could have stopped him from going. Didn't have a clue. So don't, please, you know, people point the finger at the parents, people point the finger at the siblings, say, well, tough, you should have joined ISIS, he deserves. Okay, you joined ISIS, but don't have a go at the parents. It's not their fault. Like I said earlier, as parents, you try your best to make sure your kids are protected from things that are, you know, evil or from harm and everything. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer people like that, because they just always point the finger. I bet you got a lot of abuse, didn't you?
We that was one of the reasons I didn't speak about it and didn't share it, because I was really, really worried about the judgment, the prejudice, you know, because again, there was a lot of stereotyping going around, and I was worried about all those elements. You know, it was actually in 2016 when I went public with it, because I knew I couldn't carry this burden with me anymore. I just couldn't carry on like this. It was a year after he died.
He died when?
He died, he was out in Syria for 5 months.
That's all, 5 months?
5 months, that's all he lasted. And then he unfortunately got hit by a drone, and, you know, he was killed. So it was a year later, after some of the grieving process, that then I decided, you know, it was a very difficult process for my family. I had to think about my daughters, the impact on them, my husband. But I knew if I kept silent, it was almost like I was feeding the shame and feeding almost their narrative, saying, you know, it's okay that you took my side, it's okay, and it wasn't okay, and it shouldn't have happened. And I kind of thought, I need to speak about this, because I knew I couldn't save my son, but I thought, I'm damn sure I'm going to try and save somebody else's child.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was maybe some part of my healing process, you know. And so I went public after a year, and also to, you know, I wanted to be, I thought, what kind of message am I giving my 4 daughters? That this is okay and we should be ashamed. No, we shouldn't be. It
wasn't your fault.
It really wasn't our fault. We didn't contribute in any shape or form to it. It was an external thing that happened, and, you know, it really impacted us so badly. And I thought, you know, I need to be that role model for my girls, that, you know, that you can have a voice, and no matter what the judgment is, and no matter what people want to put you in this stereotype box, you know, that you have a voice, and you know, it's important to kind of bring that awareness and knowledge to other people, so it doesn't happen to another family. You know, so that's why I decided to kind of talk about it and go public really with it.
Did you know what he was doing in those 5 months at all?
Yeah, I mean, in those 5 months, once he contacted me, we were pretty much in constant contact, probably through WhatsApp, through messaging, or
the police tried to contact him as well.
No, they didn't. But they obviously were part of, when my son was calling me, they were obviously, their whole thing was they wanted to obviously investigate to see how this had happened, who was involved, because, it wasn't just Rashid decided, to board a plane and go there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen like that. What happens as well is you can't just get a ticket and go to Turkey. You then have to try and get across a border, and you need help with that.
Yeah,
so it's not something that you can just decide one morning I'll get up and I'll go. There has to be people who are helping you. So that's why the investigation, they also wanted to find out how this had happened in Birmingham, who had been involved. So there was obviously, so they were in regular contact with me while I was in contact with Rashid. And that was a very, very difficult relationship, because not with the police, but to have that balance, because I was trying to keep connected with Rashid, but I also really, really, really wanted to help the police, that no family was going to end up the same position I was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to help the investigation so it could be stopped for anybody, any other family. So that was a real balancing act for me all the time, because obviously I really wanted to still hear from Rashid and know what was how his life was, but I also wanted to make sure it wasn't going to happen to somebody else.
Of course.
But he was in regular contact, probably every day, every other day with me through WhatsApp and messaging, or he was phoning me regularly. And a couple of occasions, I think it was a week before he died, he actually Skyped me. It was the first time I actually saw him for the first time, when he was out there in Syria.
Did he want to come back at all?
I would say there was beginning to be, instead of him being quite thinking this black and white thinking, I could see that there was some grey beginning to happen. He was beginning to kind of soften. Just the last few weeks he was out there, and I thought, okay, I've got a chance here, I can start working on him. But unfortunately, he then was killed probably about a week or two later. So I never got that chance really to kind of work on it. But there was definitely a change in the last few weeks of his life, that I think he saw things that he didn't think he was signing up to. I think he saw some quite gruesome things out there.
Things which are against Islam. Things that which as
absolutely.
Muslims you don't do. You get this false impression that you'll have a big house, you'll have a wife, you'll have this, you'll have that, you'll be kings of the country.
And that's what they promised him, and it wasn't like that, because he was actually sharing a room it was minimal fun, and it was just on the floor. He had a mattress on the floor, and they were just sort of living in one room, all of these men all together, and they used to give them away like some money, but it was very, very small, and it was just about to live on, really. That's what, so all this just didn't happen, like they promised them, this kind of utopian life, this amazing life that they're going to it's almost like they try to give them this dream of the solutions. It's like easy solutions, but the harsh reality is it's not. And it's a very, very different life out there, and it's incredibly hard, and like I said, I think things were not like what he was being sold. Especially towards the end, I could see that he definitely had doubts about why he was there and what he was doing.
So when he died, what have you been doing since he's passed away? I mean, that must have been a big trauma for you when you heard the news. How did you hear the news? Did you get a text message? Was there a phone call?
Well, before Rashid died, I'd been in touch with other families who'd lost somebody, and sometimes they found out their child, or son or daughter, was dead just by somebody posting something on Facebook saying that your son's dead or your daughter's dead, and that's how they found out. And I remember having the conversation with Rashid when he was out there, saying, I don't want to hear that you're dead on a post on Facebook or social media. I said to him, please have the courtesy and make sure that we get a phone call or something from somebody to tell us personally that you're dead. And that was horrible, because what mother has a healthy son and wants to have that conversation with them about almost preparing them, okay, if you die? It was a horrible conversation to have, but I knew it was one that I had to have, because that was really the reality of it, that he didn't have time on his hands. I knew he was going, it was only a matter of days, weeks, months that he was going to die. I didn't have time, to get him back or get him to change his mind. But we got a phone call. It was sort of lunchtime. I was at work, my husband was at home, and the guy just simply said, "Are you Rashid's father?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And he just said, "I'm sorry to tell you that Rashid's dead." And that was it.
He was a member of ISIS around there.
Yes, he was somebody who was with him at the time, I think. And then, that was literally it. And then my husband said, "Where was he killed?" And he just said, "On the Syrian-Iraq border." So literally, we have no idea where his body is. We don't have a body because we don't know where it is anyway. And without a body, you can't get a death certificate in the UK. Right. So he's not recognised in the UK as dead. I can't get a death certificate for, I think it was 7 years. And then I have to apply to the courts for a presumed death certificate. So meanwhile, I still to this day will get letters from his bank. I get his bank statements that still come to my home. I get his letters from the doctor as well, because he was asthmatic, so they will come. I've even had things from his college saying, "Congratulations, you've graduated." And I'm like, no, he has. You know, it's like it's yes, he should have been, but you know, his life very much changed.
Typical of ISIS, say they just groom they radicalise the young kids, take them away from the family, tear the family apart, and just use them as cannon fodder.
Yeah, and that's basically what he was. He was absolutely cannon fodder, really. He really was.
While the leaders are in these high places, nice chairs and nice houses and stuff, and just barking orders at the flipping heck.
Yeah, and that is the reality, because I know that people out there who were the leaders were there for quite some time. They were still out there. And I remember thinking at the time, how come you've been out there so long and you're still alive? Yeah. And my son barely got there 5 months and he was gone. Because again, they put them very ill-equipped, barely any training, because he was a young boy, a teenage boy from Birmingham who knew nothing of the outside world really much. And they basically put him in the front line, and that was it. You know, with very little preparation, and so, you know.
So what message would you like to give to people who are thinking of joining extreme groups like ISIS? But I mean, ISIS are on the back foot now. Hopefully they'll be fizzled out now.
They are, and the problem is, but I just really feel like with many of these groups, they will take some time out, and will restructure themselves, and they will come when we least expect it. So I don't think we should become, I really don't think we need to be, we have to be complacent about this. I think we need to carry on talking about it. We need to warn our young people and talk to them, because actually there'll be another group tomorrow. You know, whether it's tomorrow, next week, a few months, there will be another group. And to be honest with you, when we look at other groups in the past before ISIS, we always thought they can't get any worse, and then ISIS came along and they were a lot worse, and their reach was far greater, and that's what we're going to risk with the next group. They're going to be a lot more tech savvy, a lot more understanding the psychology of people and the process, and they will tweak their process, and that's what we need to prepare for. That we need to make sure we're safeguarding. We need to make sure we're looking after the mental health of our young people, and families as well.
There's a lot of kids going for mental health at the moment.
Absolutely.
Loads of kids. It wasn't like when I was a teenager, there was the odd, you know, kid that was depressed and stuff, but the odd suicide you hear of, but now it seems to be more and more. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why as a therapist, that's why I work with a lot of young people, and that's what I do. I very much focus. It's not that I just talk about, you know, what happened to me and Rashid and sort of the extremism. What I talk about is mental health. Not saying that mental health is a direct cause, of extremism, but it's certainly linked. When somebody's going through a difficulty or they feel vulnerable, that's where groups like ISIS or the far right come in and sweep them up. Absolutely, and kind of, they look for those vulnerabilities in somebody, or they look for those kind of things that motivate somebody as well. It's hand in hand, really. So that's what we need to, pick up on is, one, if our young people are vulnerable or there's some mental health or any issues and whatever, and sort of help them get the right support. But also because a lot of young people are very ambitious and they've really worked hard with their education, and then what happens is they struggle to get jobs or positions. And sometimes if they have that huge ambition and it's not it's not put in somewhere where, tunneled somewhere properly, that's where, again, groups like ISIS can kind of almost make them feel belonged, or they feel that they've got huge identity. And that's what we also need to be making sure that we're channeling those kind of that adventure, that ambition into the right things, rather than these ideologies that are getting thrown around.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for coming today and speaking to us about a horrible thing, but at least you're making people more aware now. You're doing workshops around the country as well, aren't you?
I do, yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
so if anyone to do a workshop with Nicola, you can contact me, you can contact Nicola. Have you got
I've got a website called Families for Life. So
Families for Life? Yeah. Life or lives?
Life. Families for Life. So I support families with extremism, but also any mental health issues or any problems they have. So it can be addictions, it can be sort of depression, or particularly any mental health, really. So,
fantastic.
Okay.
Nice one. Thank you very much, Nicola.
No problem. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I'll just look this off. That's quite good. So, I've got